Welcome to YEGMS episode number 28. Available on iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitcher Radio, YouTube, and on the MSME Internet Radio Network. The next two episodes are going to be dedicated to something that I get asked about frequently via email from listeners to the podcast, and it involves diet. And if you're a new MS warrior, or if you've been dealing with it for any length of time, likely you've been exposed to one of the various MS diets that are bouncing around on the internet. I will confess, back in 2007 when I got my official diagnosis, I switched to a paleo-style diet about 80% of the time. And it's something that I've continued on with for the past 10 years. So but you will note from, if you do any searching around, that there are several diets that are claimed to help people with MS. Some of the personalities that promote them will go as far as to say that you should stop taking your medication, Big Pharma's bad, your doctor's lying to you, and if you just eat properly, you can completely fix it. Conversely, there are other extreme views on the other side that say that if you decide to try and help yourself with diet, that you're an idiot, you should just listen to your doctor and take the DMTs and hope for the best. I'm going to start this off. So these next two episodes, this first episode is going to be my journey sort of with diet since I got diagnosed. And then the following episode number 29, I'll actually compare some of the MS diets. Because the lists aren't the same. On one particular diet, you can eat certain foods. On one diet, you can't eat those certain foods. And I think where this leaves everyone is really confused. And when you are in a place of crisis, being confused and conflicting reports really don't help, because you don't know what the right answer is. So I'm going to take you through in this episode, I'm going to take you through where I'm at in terms of diet. And then in the next episode, I'll compare them. I'll compare a few of the key ones that are out there. I think it's important to do, as I said, I've had a number of emails about it, saying, hey, have you seen this, or did you see that? And, it's not an easy question for anyone to answer. So way back in 2007, I got officially diagnosed in 2007 after a pretty severe attack in 2006. And I remember when my first neurologist told me that I had MS, I got taken to a separate room where the MS nurse took me through what Rebif was. Rebif was the first medication that I was prescribed. There was no talk about exercise. There was no talk about diet. There was no talk about any sort of lifestyle modifications. It was simply, this is your prescription, this is what you take, how you take it, you're going to have to start giving yourself a needle, and, away you go. And, when reading through the literature that they gave me, the success rate with Rebif or any DMT of that sort, Copaxone, is similar. I mean, they're not compelling. The success rates are, I think if I remember correctly, and please tweet at me or email me if I'm wrong. But I remember the one piece of information that I read that I thought really like, what's the point? Was if I'm pretty certain that in the rebuff literature, it said something to the effect of 30% of people taking it find a 30% reduction in future relapses. So 30% of 30%. I mean, I thought, well, that's, so what? Like that, it wasn't comforting, to say the least. And I remember being very angry, and I wasn't angry at the world or angry at God or anything like that. I was just angry because I got diagnosed with something that I didn't understand. Going on the internet was just an absolute mess to try and figure anything out. And I to this day, after my experience, and I don't suspect it's any better 10 years later, it's probably worse now, that anyone really has to take care about what they find online and how they internalize it. Because there's all kinds of different theories and suggestions that you'll be exposed to if you go looking. So anyway, I was angry. I wasn't really sure what was going on with my body and this disease that I really didn't know a lot about. And so I started looking, and I came across a website that had an MS diet, and it was based on the work of Dr. Lauren Cordain, who had written a paper about Paleolithic nutrition and how certain foods should be eliminated. And now his paper wasn't specific to MS, it was just general diet. And that how ancestral peoples have ate a more natural, less processed diet for the most part. So in a nutshell, and I suggest looking this up on your own because I don't have enough time to go through Paleolithic nutrition in its entirety. But essentially, you get rid of all processed foods. You get rid of legumes, which are soy, peanuts, those sorts of things. You stop eating gluten, and depending on the variety of paleo diet, it can even get more extreme than that. So I started doing that 80% of the time. I mean, my initial goal was to do it 100% of the time. But I did it about 80% of the time, and then I would cheat. And I also started running. And when I first started running, I couldn't go 500 feet, and then, 9 years later, 8 or 9 years later, I start running ultra marathons. So that kind of gives you the progression from when I started to where I ended up. But I didn't take the DMTs. I didn't take my prescribed medicine. So I was 2007. I think I first started taking medication for my MS in 2011. And what spurred that was my wife got pregnant. And it made me reevaluate my position on things. And I would say that early on, 2007, 2008, 2009, I've been in the extreme diet group, believing that this is the only way to do it, and I really internalized that. However, as things always do, and as you learn more, you realize, maybe it isn't that simple. I would agree with any of the paleo-style dieters, and I think the most notable is Dr. Terry Wahls. If you don't know her story, look it up. Her last name is Wahl, Dr. Terry Wahls. I mean, she had very progressive MS and started eating a form of a Paleolithic diet and ended up being able to get out of her wheelchair and things like that. So fast forward to now. Where I sit on diet now is a little bit different. I still follow a paleo style diet. I have been attempting for about the last 2.5 weeks to do it 100% of the time. So for the last 2.5 weeks, I haven't had any refined grains or refined carbohydrates. I haven't had any refined sugar. The only sugar I really get is through, I have one piece of fruit every day. And honestly, I do feel a lot better. A lot better. So, but anyways, back to what I was saying. So, my wife got pregnant in 2011. I started taking Copaxone. I had a mild relapse about 2 years later, so around 2014 in there. And I was switched to Tecfidera, which I still take to this day. But I still always was about 80% of the time following a paleo-style diet. But what changed for me is learning more about the differences between people in the sense of diet and how different people react. And what really got me to thinking about it was actually a few weekends ago. And this is actually about a month ago now, but this is what really spurred on why I'm trying to be 100% of the time with the paleo and no cheating. And even taking it to a more extreme form was when I first came up with the idea to run 80 kilometers in a day, which for my American listeners is roughly 50 miles, to raise money for MS research. That first year, I put in 1,700 kilometers of training. And my weight went from about 240 pounds down to about the day I woke up and started running for the very first really long run, I was 217 pounds. And I remember at the time thinking, and still carrying a tummy, I mean, I've never ever been thin or what would be considered thin. And the entire time doing all this running, and when people meet me, they always think, I can see it in their faces. They're just thinking, I can't see you doing that. They won't say it, so I say it for them, so it puts people at ease. Like, I know what you're thinking. You don't look like an ultramarathoner. I get that. But I was wondering why. I mean, my diet wasn't perfect, but it was relatively clean compared to most people. I mean, I might have some chips on the weekend or something, but for the most part, I mean, like, it wasn't that bad, or at least I didn't think so. And then I did, that was 2015, then I did the run again in 2016. So in the last 3 years, I've put in over 3,000 kilometers of road time running. I mean, that's a lot of distance to put on your body. And I still really wasn't able to consistently crack the 220-pound barrier. And when I got to Hinton for the MS mountain bike about a month ago, I was riding with buddies of mine that I've known forever, and just kept thinking to myself, how is it that somebody can train this much and not be able to even get close to 200 pounds? And I'm not talking that I wanted to build up to 200 pounds. I want to lose weight to get down to 200 pounds. And then I was thinking about, well, if I'm going to run from Jasper to Banff, either next summer or the summer after, depending on how training goes, that's a 240 kilometer trek that I'll probably do in 4 days. Well, how am I going to do that? I mean, I really need to get my weight down, but how do I get it down? I mean, you would think after running 3,000 kilometers in 2.5 years, almost 3 years now, that should have done the trick. Well, it didn't. I mean, I still carry extra weight. I have struggled with weight my entire adult life. Since I was probably 13 or 14 years old, it's been an issue, but especially as an adult. I joked with a guy the other day. I saw some jelly beans on a digital sign, and I said, I just gained weight looking at that. So really looking at my own diet. So, okay, great, paleo diet, great, that's fine. But what is it? What am I missing? What is it that I'm missing that I need to do to try and get the weight down? And one of the buzzwords around fitness these days is the ketogenic diet, which you can look up, and which is just a more extreme version of a Paleolithic diet. I mean, you're eliminating the common suspects in dairy and gluten and soy and legumes and that style of eating, but the emphasis is more on eating a lot of healthy fats and getting the bulk of your energy and your bulk of your calories from healthy fats, things like avocado, different oils, nuts, that kind of thing. Some protein, and very, very restrictive on carbohydrates and sugar. So for the past 2.5 weeks, I have had virtually no refined sugars. And if you want to know if you're eating a refined sugar enough, and really the easiest way to, if the suffix on the word is OSE, like glucose, anything OSE, it's pretty good. It's a pretty good indicator that that's a refined sugar. So like I said earlier, the only sugar I get is from the one piece of fruit that I eat a day, and there'll be some in anything you eat for the most part, but anything would be naturally occurring. I have had zero refined carbohydrates in the past 2.5 weeks. The only carbohydrates I've received are simple carbohydrates, and those would have came from sweet potatoes and beets, things like that. And I have noticed a difference. My wife has already said that, a lot of the button-up shirts I wear for work, she's like, you look like you're swimming in them. And that's after 2.5 weeks. And my belt has never been easy. I'm actually going to have to create a belt or a new notch in my belt or get a new one here pretty quickly. I feel a lot better in terms of energy, in terms of mood. But in this process, I've done a lot more looking into things and more research. And one of the things that I've found is that what a lot of people don't realize, and one of the things why I think a lot of the MS diet people need to scratch a little deeper than they are. I don't think it's as simple as you following the same diet plan as, say, Dr. Terry Walls. I don't think it's as simple as eliminating certain types of foods. What I found is that, as an example, and I'm borrowing this from Rob Wolf, and I was listening to him on the Joe Rogan podcast. And if you have a chance, you can type in Joe Rogan, Rob Wolf into YouTube and it'll come up, or you can look on the Joe Rogan Experience podcast on iTunes and find it yourself. But anyway, this Rob Wolf is a very well-known person in the paleo community and wealth of knowledge in terms of nutrition and that. But one of the things he was saying, and I've read this elsewhere, but this is just an easy place to reference, is that, let's just use, for example, we prepare a full cup of white rice. You eat half of it, I eat the other half. Our insulin response will be entirely different. And you can extrapolate that out to a whole bunch of different types of foods. All of our bodies don't react differently based on what we're eating. It's not consistent across the board. And one of the pieces that plays a role is your gut health. The good flora and fauna that comprise the gut, like that good bacteria that's supposed to be in there. And recent studies have shown that your gut is almost part of your brain. It can really affect your mood. It's been referred to as your second brain. And a lot of that is the interplay of these bacteria that in your gut that are necessary to process food properly and to make sure that it's getting broken up and out, that you're taking all the nutrients out of the food. Well, trying to promote good gut health is a separate science unto itself, and again, everyone's different. So, for example, there's something called the beet test, and I'm talking about beet, the vegetables. So everybody knows when you eat beets, when you poop next, it's usually the color of the beet comes out in your poop, and if you're not prepared for it, it can be kind of upsetting because, your poop is red. And that's normal. But what isn't normal after eating beets is you shouldn't see any of that red color in your pee. Your urine should still be a normal color. And the beet test is to see how you're functioning in terms of that internal bacteria and flora. You can all look this stuff up online. This is definitely not my information that I'm passing along. And I did that about 3 weeks ago, and sure enough, my pee was a little bit red. So I've been, really working on eating sauerkraut because it's a good probiotic. But it's can't just a note on sauerkraut. If the sauerkraut is made from vinegar, it won't work. It's got to be the stuff that's made where it's just salt. Like making old-fashioned pickles. You don't use vinegar. You make a brine and then you put the pickles in, and that will help populate the good gut bacteria. Things like kombucha. If you've never heard of kombucha, it is basically fermented tea. You can drink that. There's all kinds of stuff you can do to. One of the common ones they say is yogurt, but then you have to deal with the dairy. So, but maybe yogurt works for you because maybe you can process dairy. I don't do well with dairy. It gives me gas. I don't feel good. But again, those are the differences in people. So from my point of view, I think that it's not the right way to go to sit there and beat your chest and say all people with MS should eat one way. Well, if that would only be true if we were all the same, but we're not. And do I think it's possible that you can help treat your MS through diet? Yes, I do. Because if you're eating something that's compromising your immune system, causing additional inflammation, and just overall not making you healthy and putting you into an unhealthy state, then absolutely. We're eating better is always going to be better for you. I don't think anyone will dispute that. But I think the tricky thing is trying to find a diet that works really, really well for you as an individual. Your body composition, your makeup, your genetics, every part of you is going to make it different for you than for me. I don't do well with gluten. I don't do well with dairy. These are things I know because I've witnessed the changes. But if you're listening to this and you try eliminating one of those, you might think, well, that didn't do anything for me. I don't feel any different. Well, that is a likely outcome because we're not the same. So back to my example about running, when you run as much as I do and have been for the last number of years, you wonder, what is it? How do all I want to get down to is 190 pounds. 190 pounds for most people is still fairly heavy. Imagine being an ultra marathon or running at 220. You should see when I go. I'm doing an ultra marathon in Canmore this weekend, which is on the side of a mountain. It's 55K. When I get into the starting gate, people look at me. They're like, "Jesus, this guy's doing this." Well, yeah, and I can. Physically, I'm more than able to do it. I'm not the slowest guy out there. I'm far from the fastest guy. Some of these guys that it almost feels like they're sprinting. But I'm not the slowest guy. So there had to be another factor, and I strong from what I've witnessed over the last 2.5, almost 3 weeks now, is it's certainly diet based, and I'm going to be 41 on the weekend, and I'm setting up to have a real boring last half of my life, because what's become really, really apparent to me is that I can't have anything fun. And I just have to eat that way to feel good. But I feel so much better now. And kicking that stuff was so hard that I wouldn't go through it again. It wasn't a lot of fun getting off processed sugar. It wasn't fun getting off processed carbohydrates, because really what I realized, I was addicted to them. Very much addicted to them. And the sugar salt cycle that modern processed food puts us on. And now I'm feeling a lot better, a lot more energetic, and my mood is more even, my outlook is more positive. But I can't sit here and say that if you ate exactly the way I've been eating for the last couple of weeks that it would work for you. So I would suggest to anyone with MS to test, try eliminating dairy. See if that has an effect for, a couple of weeks. That doesn't work. Try eliminating processed sugar. Try eliminating, different foods until you find that ideal diet where you feel the best and you're being properly fueled. To sit back and simply say, through that we can eliminate MS through diet is not being truthful. So that's what I'm up to in terms of diet. Next episode, I will compare and contrast a few of the more common MS diets that you'll find. And if you have any questions, email me, Sean at ownmultiplesclerosis.com. That's Sean, SEAN, at ownmultiplesclerosis.com. Or you can hit me up on Twitter at ownms.com1. Anyways, if you're watching this on YouTube, please give it a like, subscribe on iTunes, and we will talk to you in a little while. Thanks very much.